Hi guys, welcome to the fourth edition of the Rangman Show. Today we've started a new series called as Wow. Wow for us means women of will, and it's only befitting that we start this show with an Indian stalwart who we will get to later. You would have seen the animation at the beginning of this video on the logo, which is depicting the lady we are going to be discussing today. While we'll get on to her in a bit. So Keyur, my guest today is Keyur Dev. He's been working with me in communications, which was I think in my previous lifetime. It's been almost an age that I've left advertising. Uh, He's a diehard fan of Indian history. He celebrated Indian warriors, Indian army heroes, uh, Indian men, Indian women of the past. So it's only right to have him on the show to discuss the great icon we would be discussing in a bit. So, Keyur, when we speak about women of will, what does that
Hmm.
term mean to you?
Uh, if you see a recent example, which is basically you just have to go back a week and you look at the Tokyo Olympics. Uh, India has won two medals so far. One in boxing, another one in weightlifting. Both of them women. Both of them coming from really small towns and making a mark for India in sports which are not really like commonly performed or played or have facilities for something like that. Even in urban centers, forget about the smaller towns and the tier two cities and all that stuff. But even in bigger urban centers, if you don't play cricket or football, there aren't a lot of sports which are like commonly played or talked about or known about. That is first part of it. Second is uh, when you are somebody from a smaller town, you by default are treated in a slightly different way. Adding to that, you're a woman who has come from this small town, excelled in your sport at a regional level, then at a national level, and then you're representing your country at the Olympics and you're winning a medal. So that takes a certain kind of what you call it, a certain type of a special person. You need a lot of mental toughness, perseverance, and all those kind of typical words that we hear usually in motivational videos and all that. Those are the kind of things that you need to do something like that. And these women, the ones I mentioned right now, who won Olympics, even the ones that are ruling the corporate sector, you take the Indira Nuis of the world. There are a lot of women in banking heading a lot of banks.
There's
There are a
something
lot
about
of
the word,
women.
the name Indira and women of that name doing
Hmm,
brilliant things, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Indira Nui,
Probably
and
there
then
probably if you do a some sort of a numerology जैसा रहता है, you might be able to find some sort of a correlation in that. So I just have a lot of respect. So if you look at politics, there is women like Indira Gandhi, who's the topic of today, Sushma Swaraj, who was loved by literally everybody, the opposition as well as the her own
her own
party and
party.
the
Yeah.
nation in general. Yeah, yeah. So it's very inspiring to see uh, people in general, not just women or men, people in general do something which is out of the box, which they have succeeded in, and for which they have worked very hard. So that is something that personally inspires me a lot, and I try to look for stories like that so that because if you go to see now, millennials, specifically the generation that I am from, you're a baby boomer, but the generation that I am from, we struggle to keep ourselves motivated. We need quick turnaround and everything. We need all the results quickly. We don't want to, like, we want to work hard, but we want the results as well very quickly. So what happens is you keep on getting a little demotivated every now and then. And the way I try to come out of it is I look at stories of people who just inspired. So the institute that I look at a lot is Indian Army, of course. And apart from that, I also try to learn about people who have made an impact on the country or on a global scale. And yeah, that is what I feel.
It's I take a word from what you just said, which is inspiration, inspired, and so the guest obviously you've spilled the beans in a nice way of me
Hmm.
discussing Indira Gandhi today. Indira, the name only has so much of stature, so much of strength, so much of power. So when we discuss Indira Gandhi, before we get into celebrating her, there was a quote that I'd come across. This was said by Mr. Barua, who was the
Hmm.
president of the Indian National Congress during the emergency
Congress.
time. Yeah, and he said that uh, India is Indira and Indira is India. So those are very
Hmm.
powerful words. The only differentiator here is the alphabet R, the additional R,
Hmm.
which for me means resolute. And she was the most resolute leader that I've seen who's held the fort for India. Obviously, she was the only and the first women prime minister of this country. And how much ever we speak about her is less, at least from my personal point of view. And for me, any person, any girl, woman, lady who's out there to conquer the world is resolute. So, resolute, the word defines the women's sex for me because they are
Hmm.
so resolute, and the word shining because everything that they do,
Hmm.
like you rightfully said, the two medals that we've won in the Olympics have come thankfully to the women. So India shining equals India women. Now the world shining equals world women. So that's the kind of world we live in, and it's no longer a patriarchal society, so to speak. So talking about Indira Gandhi, my earliest memories that I read of her were that she took on politics right from a very young age. From the time India became independent in 1947, she started shadowing her
Even before
father,
that.
and even before that, yeah, even before that, even during her schooling, during her studies, she was keenly interested in politics. So she started shadowing her father Jawaharlal Nehru, when he became the prime minister. And from 1947 till 1964, she was with him as his personal assistant, and she traveled the world. And she got a big insight into Indian politics. In fact, such was the caliber that she set up the first women's section in the Indian National Congress in 1956, which was like hats
Yeah.
off to her because this was essentially dominated by the men, and she was giving women a chance to shine in politics. So hats off there. So, Q, in that time, what's a memory that you have of her? Obviously, you were not born then, and you're not close to being an
Neither were
IT
my parents,
also.
to be honest.
Neither were your parents. But from the little you've read or from whatever you've gathered,
Yeah.
so how do you see her primitive years, her initial
So
formative years, rather? Yeah.
yeah, formative. So by the time I discovered Indiraji, of course, uh, it was after her death because I was born in 1994 and blah, blah. So I discovered Indira
She
Gandhi
died
when
10 years
I
before you
met.
were born,
Yes, yes.
the year in which I was
I
born.
discovered you were born. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have always been a fan of the army. Everything and anything about the army or the armed forces in general. There is that X factor that kind of fascinates me, and it's been like that ever since I have remembered. It's been like that. The first movie I remember having watched in the theaters with my parents was Border, which is basically about a tale of how a small Indian contingent held up against Pakistani attack at Longewala in the 71 war. And when I started reading up about the 71 war, the magnitude of the entire 71 war, we don't realize it. Our generation doesn't really know what exactly happened. We created two separate nations, and she was instrumental
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
And when I started reading up about the entire thing, I realized that however controversial Indira Gandhi may have been, like this is in hindsight, however controversial she may have been, uh, she was the leader because of whom we came out not unscathed. It was traumatizing for all sides involved, but we came out victorious in the 71 war. That is where I discovered Indira Gandhi as a character, and
She heard the cries
we
of
always
the East
yeah,
Pakistanis or Bangladeshis, so to speak,
the
to
Bangladeshis
get a new
at the
nation,
time.
to get their own nation. That was phenomenal
Yeah,
there to actually
So
incite
I
steps to
think at
doing
the
that.
end,
Yeah,
yeah, because in 71 India was not exactly a well-off country. We are still on the
we were
way,
still
but
reeling
compared
from
to
the 1962 China
yeah,
War and the 1965 Pakistan War. Yeah. Fighting three wars in a matter of
you froze
fighting
again for
three.
a second.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
Fighting three
okay.
wars in a matter of 10 years or less than 10 years is like it really takes up on
With
your
an
economic
economy which
situation.
didn't have
Yeah,
much to back on, like fall back on. There was no
yeah,
like economy was not that great. Agriculture
yeah.
was the biggest component of our economy, which was always not really look after really well. So in that those times, she had the sensibility. First of all, our good fortune is that she was surrounded by people who knew what they were doing. For example, be it Field Marshal Sam Manek Shaw, be it the people of RAW and IB who basically went into East Pakistan at the time and created Mukti Vahinis after Pakistani Army General Tika Khan and everybody had started to basically completely massacre all the people and try to replicate what the Nazis were doing to the Jews, basically. That is what West Pakistan was trying to do with East Pakistan. And they sort of looked to us and were like, can you help us? And we did. And she played an instrumental role in that because she was the head of state at the time. And she had the sensibilities to listen to the people who were around her. And I think all of that comes from her overall grooming, which happened. Uh, of course, a large part of it she spent with Jawaharlal Nehru, who was her father, and also the first PM of India, who again also is a very, very controversial figure. But I think the larger aspect of it is when she was
You
uh,
like discussing
slightly older. And
controversies on a Saturday, don't
yeah, advertising does that to you. So what just before she became the PM, she was working after Jawaharlal Nehru had passed away. She had sort of lost her interest in politics because from a young age she had seen the war of India, the freedom fight. She had seen it very closely. She had seen everything that her family and in general Indians had gone through at the time. Even after that, she had seen the 47 war, the rest of the wars that happened. And then Jawaharlal Nehru passes away. Her father, whom she was very close to, and like everything she had learned about politics stemmed sort of from him. And that was basically must have been her inspiration. And she was not really keen on being in politics, staying in politics. She was close to her family and she wanted to, I think, spend more time with them. But what ended up happening was Lal Bahadur Shastri, who became the PM after Nehru had passed away, sort of persuaded her into being in the cabinet. She
She was
was
the
the
communication
information and
and
broadcast.
broadcasting,
Yeah,
communication and
Yeah,
broadcasting
she was the
minister. Yeah.
minister for that, and he persuaded her into staying. And she wasn't really. She looked at LBS for an inspiration for quite some time. Who again is one of the best PMs India had, but for a really short period of time. But she looked at him and she, I think, found a new vision for the India that he wanted to make. And
Yeah.
once he had passed away in, I think, 65, 66, if I'm not
66.
mistaken,
Yeah.
66, right? Because she became the PM after that. There was a lot of internal politics happening. She was still not the firebrand politician that we know her as today. But I think that is where the spark had come from. Those 3-4 years that she had spent at the tail end of PM Nehru's career and at the beginning of LBS's career as the PM. That is where the spark, I personally believe, sort of had come for a vision for the India that she had. And after she became the PM, she had the sensibilities to listen to her, to the people that assist her in making decisions. she was sort of an autocratic leader beyond a point. She knew what she wanted to do, and she had the know-how to get it done. But at the same time, when it came to something like a 71 war, or something like a Pokhran, or something like a Green Revolution, or something like a missile program, or something like the satellite program, all of which were sort of
We'll get on to
started during her.
we'll
Yeah.
get on to the Green
So she had the
Revolution because
sensibilities.
that came from a very interesting slogan. Yeah.
Hmm. So
In
these are,
fact, it
see,
was started by
basically,
Lal Bahadur Shastri, but she in
yes, of course. She
71
took it for, yeah,
propagated
yeah,
the slogan of Garibi Hatao. And
yeah.
because the mass population was still very focused towards agriculture, so she set up a lot of facilities that could increase the produce of agriculture. So that was hats off to her there also.
Put more
This was
money in
simultaneous.
agriculture,
Yeah,
basically.
this was simultaneous to India fighting the war. So it wasn't only an
Yeah,
external stand that she
yeah.
took to show India as a beacon of shining light in the world, but also an internal stand where she was doing a lot to actually make the population at large happy and self-sufficient, so to speak. Speaking about
Yes.
controversy, the reason why people say she was controversial was because she just demanded loyalty. And I think
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong in demanding loyalty from your cabinet. She was the one that I will lead you, so get led by me. Just show your loyalty towards me and you know, don't have not exactly a difference of opinion, but don't alienate me as your leader,
Hmm.
which possibly wasn't taken too kindly by her own people and by the opposition party. And that's why in
Hmm.
77, when she was no longer the PM, India
Kala
went into a
Mango
state
had
of,
happened.
India went into a
Emergency.
state of emergency. Yeah. So not
Yeah.
necessarily controversial, it's how you look at it. A controversy aspect was only
Controversial from the
asking for,
standpoint that different people have different
yeah,
opinions on her that way.
yeah, exactly. So for me, she just asked for loyalty, which could be misconstrued as controversial, which I don't think is wrong. But yeah, speaking about
Yeah.
controversy and what happened in Operation Blue Star, yes, I would agree because in a holy shrine that shouldn't have happened, and as a result, she also got assassinated. But we won't
But
dig into that too
yeah,
much.
of
But
course.
but you
Yeah,
can give
yeah,
your two
yeah,
cents
of
on that.
course.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I feel the actual encounter that happened, Blue Star, the actual operation that happened, the other two generals also, I forgot, I can't remember their names. The generals I think Chief of Army Staff and the general who had led the actual operation on ground were both assassinated. One of them was a
That's
Maharashtrian
right.
who stayed in Pune, Prabhat Road. I feel he stayed somewhere over there, and he was also assassinated at his home after he had retired. So she wasn't the only one who sort of
Yeah.
bore the brunt of the thing. But what happens is, if you want to maintain the sovereignty of the country as a head of state, when there is a terrorist, it was basically a terrorist attack at the end of the day, and you can't really think about whether this is a mandir masjid or a church, and you can't send people in that to save other people or save your country from somebody who doesn't really mean very well. So what she did, you can't really define it from a cultural standpoint कि उन्होंने किया वो सही किया कि नहीं किया, but at that point there was not much else you could do other
There
than
were
strong arm
anti-social
the.
elements in the temple at that
Exactly,
point in time,
exactly,
so it
yeah.
needed military action. Now it's how you look at
There's
it.
no other option. Yeah.
But you
Strategically, there was no other option.
let's discuss on the 71 war. So once India won
Yeah.
the 71 war, the president then actually gave her the Bharat Ratna. So it was a big deal. Getting the Bharat Ratna during your tenure is something really
As a
unparalleled.
yeah.
Yeah. So so throw some light more, considering you like army, you like wars. So give us some insights into what was the strategy behind India forming Bangladesh or getting Bangladesh as an independent country, and also defeating Pakistan in a way that even the word defeat would shy, because it was a mammoth defeat. So
Yeah. 90,000
throw some
POWs.
exactly, throw some insights into that.
So there was a lot of Pakistan as a country, even I did not know for the longest time while I was in school that Pakistan and Bangladesh were one country divided by India. Like geographically, they were
West Pakistan,
one
East Pakistan.
entire country. Yeah. They were one country separated by a landmass that is India. So, of course, there ought to be cultural differences, right? Because West Pakistan is toward Afghanistan. There is a different culture sort of going on over there. There is also an amalgamation of cultures that had happened after they had gotten their independence, and ethnically, the entire paradigm had shifted in Pakistan. Similarly, in Bangladesh as well, those were traditionally Bengali people of various religions, Hindus as well as Muslims, who were traditionally Bengali in their way of life and everything. And what was happening was Mujibur Rahman was one of the people that was sort of emerging as a new and upcoming leader and politician, and he had a lot of support in East as well as West Pakistan, very honestly. But the West Pakistani way was a little different. They didn't really like the Bengali people. They considered them racially and ethnically inferior. And I think a situation similar to the Second World War situation where Germans just didn't like the Jews. So what do we do with them? We put them in camps and kill all of them. That was kind of the thing that was happening, where Pakistani army was just ordered to ethnically cleanse Bangladesh of its
You were saying
Aboriginal
that
people.
there could have been an East Pakistan Holocaust also.
Yeah, there was. In fact, there was, I think, about a lakh or 2 lakh people who were just killed, raped, murdered, pillaged, burnt by the West Pakistani army. General Tika Khan, I believe, was the Pakistani general who was. I think his famous words were, I will rid Bangladesh of these Bengalis or something like that, which is basically what he was doing. He had ordered the Pakistani army to just go ahead and
So they only
kill
wanted
and do what they
West
want.
Pakistan Muslims to stay in East Pakistan.
Yeah. So they wanted that portion of the people to have all the power. बाकी के लोगों का जो होता है देखा जाएगा, kind of a thing. And that is when the Bengali people started, like the people in East Pakistan started just coming to India because there was nothing left for them to do over there. They were being killed wholesale. They were being, like, the women were being raped. Children were killed. Like there are some really horrific stories. I think people should go online and read up these stories. These are really, really horrific stories. Like, it's bad. It's very bad. And people had started to pour into India. And India also at that point in time didn't really have a lot of geopolitical stature the way we have today. Like if India says something, there is some seriousness behind it. People will at least consider it. Those things did not happen back then.
But
And
after that war, after India won that war, the geopolitical stature of India increased.
It changed. Yeah,
After that, and
it increased
especially
multifolds.
because we had the Soviet backing after that. So when India said something and when Indira Gandhi said something, the world listened. So that's also a very big accomplishment.
I think that way she played a really big role in, first of all, leading the country internally as well as trying to free Bangladesh. But at the same time, she was going around giving interviews to international media and trying to create a narrative, because that is all that matters at the end of the day. Because India has always been sort of, like, even during the Kargil war, the pressure was on India not to attack. Similarly, the same thing was happening back in 71 as well. And she was the one who basically was the mouthpiece of the country. And she was saying that there are so many Bangladeshi people poor and hungry. They don't have jobs. They don't have homes. They're just coming to our country. What do? We can't just send them back to die. We can't just let them be. We have to feed them and we have to try and solve the problem. So internally, RAW had already started RAW had taken steps. RAW, which is basically the RNAW, Research and Analysis Wing of India, which does covert operations in India as well as other countries, along with Intelligence Bureau, had started taking steps in East Pakistan. And they had started the Mukti Vahini and everything. Mujibur Rahman was already imprisoned at that time. He had won the election, but he was still imprisoned in West Pakistan. And there was a massacre going on in East Pakistan. So Indian army had sort of, not Indian army, Raw and everybody had sort of created a militia of local militia of Bangladeshis, which is called the Mukti Vahini, and they had started sort of a freedom struggle to get rid of the atrocities being done by West Pakistan. And eventually, Pakistan made the mistake of actually physically attacking India on our western front, which is the Battle of Longewala and Basantar and everything. And we ended up winning that. Like, we obliterated them. We stalled them for 6 months. Because Indira Gandhi had said very famously to Sam Manekshaw that I want to attack now, and Sam Manekshaw was like, "We will lose." So I need more time because the rainy season was about to come. The roads are not very good. Equipment-wise, we were fledgling as always. And he said, I need 6 months. And she gave him 6 months, which is something that an autocratic leader who usually is very strong-headed is not something that is very normal or usual. And she listened to him. She heard out people in Raw. She consulted them. And the rest is history. The rest is literally history, because the war ended with 90,000 Pakistani prisoners of war surrendering to India, which is, I believe, is the largest the number of POWs since the end of Second World War. So that is historic. That is, we created history, and she was at the forefront of that. So that is something that always fascinated me, and irrespective of everything else that people might like her or not like her for, this is something that I personally respect her for. Because had we not had a strong leader who not only created a narrative on the international level, but also was very sound in terms of strategy, and we would not have maybe created the history would have been different, probably.
Yeah, leadership is so important, and we were so lucky that we had Lal Bahadur Shastri also, who was such a resolute and strong leader.
Yeah.
That seamlessly sort of transcended into Indira Gandhi, who herself was so strong.
Yeah.
What also fascinates me, Keyur, is that for the first 10 years that she was the Prime Minister, and after that, unfortunately, due to the controversy and due to the emergency, she was out of office for 3 years. But then she made a strong comeback, and for the next 4 years, from 80 to 84, she was again the Prime Minister, yeah, which is no mean feat. Because losing out
which
and
isn't
being
like
being in a situation where there's presidential rule, and after that coming, like turning the emergency into something which favors you and coming back into power means something. So hats off
of
to
course. She was a
her
good strategist. She was a
sensibilities,
really good strategist.
her strategic thinking, ability to analyze situations and how to best get her stuff going is phenomenal.
I just wanted to throw some light on the emergency aspect of it, because a lot of people fail to understand. Even I don't understand it in depth, because had you not lived
it's
that time,
highly
you can't really
controversial.
relate.
Different people say different
It's very
things.
controversial. Of course. So the gist of the matter is, in 77, Allahabad court had sort of convicted her or put out a report saying she had employed a government official during the elections, which is basically illegal manipulation. And that is basically why the opposition wanted her to. So in essence, the election had been compromised as per the court, and that is the reason opposition wanted her to step down. Her defense to this was, there are external powers in play which don't want her in the her as the prime minister, because she's not letting them have what they really want to have, making India a puppet state or whatever the conspiracies were at the time. And that is the reason to protect India from external threats and whatnot. She decided, and she could not differentiate really between the enemy, internal as well as the external enemy. And the only way she could see is to put the emergency in effect. However controversial it may be, these are the two sides of it. That the opposition did not want her as the PM anymore, because the election may have been compromised, and she felt that it was a conspiracy that was being made not only against her but also the country. So these are the two
So
sides of it.
basically
And
a
people
coup
should
to dethrone her as the prime minister.
kind of. And the larger picture that she thought was that if she's not in power, India might not be as powerful as it is. So those are completely different.
Well, I would totally second her on
Uh,
that. If she wasn't in power, India wouldn't be that powerful. Because the way she got India as a force in the world was something. But Kevu,
yeah,
let's
because
discuss
in the
some more. Yeah, go on, go on.
yeah, yeah.
No, go on.
In the discourse today, na, if you see, there are two stark. Usually, there is usually some gray area in a discourse. You
Yeah,
might like something, I might not like something, but there is always that openness to talk about it and whatever. But lately, if you see, it's everything is very black and white. There is one side, and then there is the other side, and that's all. There is nothing in between. Even in times like that, people will point fingers at PM Nehru, people will point fingers at Congress party, people will point fingers at BJP, vice versa. But there is very little in the sense of pointing fingers at Indira Gandhi ji or saying ki nahi, she was not good, she was this, that. That is what I think speaks volumes of how powerful she really was.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
in spite of all of the decisions which may have been negative or controversial, whatever, however you want to look at it, she still made a difference which was very large for
Mammoth, it
anybody.
was gigantic.
For us
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
it was
100%,
mammoth. It was
100%.
mammoth. We don't understand the
But
magnitude of who he was.
as I said
That's what I
earlier,
feel.
yeah, 100%. She made an internal and external difference. So hats off to her there.
Yeah, yeah.
So if
She did.
let's discuss some more positive things about her. So in 1999, she was awarded with the Woman of the Millennium by BBC, which was
Hmm.
like phenomenal. And 2012, if I'm not mistaken, Outlook anointed her as the seventh number
Hmm.
in the greatest Indians, in the
Indians.
list of
Yeah.
greatest
Of
Indians,
the century.
of the
Yes.
century. So that was also
Yeah.
very phenomenal.
Yeah. That's quite fair.
So considering the fact that people have awarded her and she's got that recognition, I would definitely tilt towards her being a very powerful lady who had a certain amount of shortcoming. But having said that, who doesn't? Because I'm yet to
Hmm.
come across any person who would only speak negative about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's what I was
yeah.
trying to. That is the
So
point I was
yeah,
trying to make.
so
That you will find people who
there are
unanimously hate
controversies with
one side,
everyone.
and
So
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
The
But
very fact that
more
she's
often than
got a
not, you
Bharat
come across people
Ratna,
who like her.
she's got a Bharat Ratna. She's been declared Women of the Millennium. Plus, she's seventh on the list of the greatest Indians in the century. It speaks volumes here because I don't know any single other Indian leader, so to speak, in the post-independence era who's
Hmm.
actually won so much. And the very fact
Hmm.
that we still somewhere are a patriarchal society and she's created that niche for herself in this political domain of male domination also speaks volumes.
No, but I feel so. One aspect is very less spoken about is that there were women in the
But not
independence
to the
struggle as well.
level that they were
Huh.
leading countries and stuff.
Hmm. But you can also look at it in the other way to look at it could be that she was also the daughter of the first
Yeah,
prime
so
minister of India,
that's
and
that's so before we end this podcast, that's the other
hmm,
topic I wanted to discuss with you. So there have been certain facets of the media that have got
hmm.
nepotism in the equation. Like because of Nehru, she came into power, and because of her, Rajiv Gandhi came into power. So what is your stand there? Because obviously,
I
if you
so
don't
very
win
honestly,
something, you would obviously put the blame on things like nepotism and family comes first, which is something which is ongoing today also.
so the practical aspect of looking at it is that she had simply because she was Nehru's daughter. You can't deny that fact, and you just can't. You can't deny that fact. And what happens is the position that she was in, she was not somebody initially who was power hungry or mujhe ye karna hai, mujhe wo karna hai kind of a thing. In fact, she wanted to she leave politics and concentrate on her family and be around her family and all of that after Nehru had passed away. And LBS, like I had said earlier, LBS is the one who sort of persuaded her into staying in politics, because he must have seen something in her, or he must have wanted somebody like her who was, irrespective of her gender, she was somebody who was very strong, somebody who's very strategically sound, who can get things done. That is something that matters at the end of the day. So yes, there is of course an aspect of she being the daughter of Nehru playing a part in where she reached, because had she been a common person, had she been born in a common family, you might not have even known her, or maybe she might have joined politics, but she might not have risen to a level that she rose, because she would have had to start from the very bottom, which is not the case. Now she had to. She was already Nehru's daughter. She had access to somebody of the stature of Mahatma Gandhi, who told her ki, "ठीक है, you should do things like this. You should do things like that at her very early age." So if of course I wouldn't call it nepotism, because she turned out really capable when she did take charges of different offices. So I don't see any harm in that, in Indira Gandhi's case in particular. Later on, yes, that is also true that there was an aspect of dynastical politics happening, because I think Pranab Mukherjee was supposed to be the prime minister, was the more what do you call it, more
Likely
qualified
candidate.
candidate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, qualified candidate to be the PM at the time. But again, K. Kamraj being the kingmaker he put Rajiv Gandhi in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Had Sanjay Gandhi been there, probably he would have been the PM after Indira Gandhi. You never know, but of course, nepotism does play a part in it. But if the results of it are going to be somebody like Indira Gandhi, then I think it's fine. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, it just
And you
basically
see,
comes
na,
down to a
nepotism.
very
Rahul Gandhi is
simple.
where he is. Rahul Gandhi is where he is because he is
Let's
the
not
son
go
of
there,
Rajiv
Kevin.
Gandhi.
Let's not go there. Basically, the point is that everyone needs an opportunity, and what you make of that opportunity
Of
is what
course,
really matters.
of course,
So she got that
of course.
opportunity, and after that, she made a dynasty. She was possibly
Everybody
the
is born
best
with
prime
certain
minister that.
benefits and not.
Yeah, yeah. So she possibly is the best prime minister that India's had. I'm sure one of the best. The other one that I really look up to, really admired, was Lal Bahadur Shastri. So,
Yeah.
Kevin, any parting words on your experience in this podcast, and any message you would like to give to the viewers before we sign off?
I'm not really in a position to give any messages to anybody, because I'm still learning a lot.
No, but anything,
First of
whatever
all,
you feel from this topic, something that you would want to give as a parting message. And how's been your experience coming on this show?
yeah, that I wanted to talk about that. Thanks, first of all,
Yeah.
thanks a lot for calling me on your podcast. I'm looking forward to coming more often. And I think as parting words, I'd just like to say this is coming from a 26-year-old. So make your judgments about it. But what I see is people don't really aren't really open to a lot of discussions and conversations without getting very weirdly aggressive about things. So I feel that is something that we should not
Aggressive
be
or
doing,
defensive?
and defensive, aggressive, whatever it is that you might want to call it. Indifferent, it's subjective, right? So I personally feel that in today's times, what matters is India has always seen itself as a Vishwaguru, and we are capable of doing that, because if we just keep our eyes and ears open and try to understand all sides of something, try to understand the context of things, try to understand our history more properly, we will grow as a country in no time. That is something that is keeping us from growing, not just as a country but also as individuals. And that is something that I personally want to follow in my life. I am trying to get there, and by talking about it with people, it sort of helps to see different sides of the story and being open about things and learning more things. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So Kevu's given a very strong message, have a point of view and be accepting to all point of views. And together you should go. So that those are very strong words. It's been a It's been an honor. I mean, honor would feel shy with the subject that we've spoken today, with the lady we've celebrated today. And we have more to come under the series of Women of Will. So stay tuned. Hope you like this episode. Please like, share, subscribe to our channel. Until we come with the next guest, the next woman we'll celebrate under the Women of Will series. This is Pranay Rangra signing off. I'm sorry again, Dev Tyagi wasn't a part of this episode. Thanks, Kevud.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Pranay. Anytime.
So cheers, guys.
Cheers.